This is a how-to training video today on how to trim hedges. Now, trimming hedges is something that you are going to have to really get some good practice at because there are so many different types of bushes. Now, when I'm talking about trimming hedges, I'm particularly just talking about the bushes. Some people would include other types of almost plant-like growth things in the hedge trimming. I particularly am only talking about trimming hedges. This does not include actual pruning of hedges. Pruning is slightly different than just trimming off the excess growth over hedges. So if you want to know more about pruning, you can refer to one of the other videos. This video is specifically referring to trimming the hedges in just trimming the excess growth and keeping the shapes of the hedges. Okay? Now, when I first started my lawn care business, I actually included hedge trimming in my overall yearly packages or lawn care services, and I included trimming hedges, 3-4 times a year, and I said, okay, I'm going to do this 3 times a year. The problem with doing this is there are so many different types of hedges that need to be trimmed at different times that just saying you're going to cut them 3 times a year is not necessarily going to be the best, because some need to be cut more often than others, and you will learn which ones need to be cut more. If you have a regular year-round lawn care customer and you are including hedge trimming, it is actually best to just say, I'm including hedge trimming as needed for this basic additional monthly charge. The reason is some of your hedges you will actually trim the excess growth if you want to keep it nice and shaped consistently. Some you will need to trim once a month. Some you will only need to trim maybe once every 6 months. Some you will need to trim once a quarter or every 3 months. Okay, so just to give some advice, offering overall hedge trimming at specific times is not necessarily the best way to do hedge trimming. Okay, as far as keeping the shape of most of your bushes, you can pretty much trim them any time that they are not in a bloom. The bloom, most of these hedges that bloom will put off little flower type pods, and you can see the flowers starting to bloom or the little buds. You do not want to trim those during those times, but any other times it is okay to trim. Now keep in mind, as you are trimming, the areas that you choose to trim, every time you cut off one branch or sucker or whatever you want to call it that's poking out, you're going to get a couple that sprout off of that. So if you just see a few little hedges or a few little sprouts at the top and you just hit those, keep in mind that that's where you're going to get your growth, especially during the growing time of that plant. It tends to, wherever it's pruned or cut, even though the hedge trimming, we're not calling that pruning, it is a pruning in that sense that it's being cut off and then you're going to get a couple sprouts off of that. But keep in mind, if you're going to trim the hedges, to actually trim slightly the entire area of the plant or the bush, depending on the type. Some you have the long square hedges that are kind of grown together. Again, just keep that in mind as you trim. Now, I'm learning the best way for me to trim is to actually look at each time I'm out in the service to actually go and just keep the shape. Sometimes you can actually just use the little hand trimmers and just shape off any excess that you see and go around and do the clipping, and you can maintain those. And if you want to just charge a monthly charge, or if it's just a customer that says, hey, don't really care about my hedges looking perfect all the time, I'll just call you on an as needed basis, that's where it's going to get pretty crazy. So I want to talk about just the steps in trimming the hedges and how to do them as quickly as possible, and the cleanup steps as well. So first of all, I actually like to use a hedge trimmer that is handheld, not a long hedge trimmer. There's a few different types that you can get. I actually have a handheld gas trimmer by Stihl that I love. That is really good. When I first started out, I actually started out with a little Black & Decker battery-powered tiny little hedge trimmer, and actually for a first-timer in the lawn care business with, you know, a few customers who I did hedge trimming, it worked out. But you'll definitely want to work up towards a gas trimmer. And the handheld ones are the best for your basic bushes around, you know, the houses. Now you're going to get into some really tall holly type bushes that are almost holly trees and those things that you can't reach, and you'll either need to have a ladder or you can have the extension hedge trimmers that I actually use on my taller bushes for the trimming those bigger, larger bushes. And the type that I have actually creates or has different angles that you can set it at, and it actually goes on the end of my split shaft Stihl weed eater head or trimmer head, whatever you want to call it, and I like to use it on most all my large bushes. And smaller bushes that I'm keeping up with regularly, I actually like to just use the little hand ones and just snip them off. Little by little I can go around, save gas, and just keep the shape of the bushes. And depending on how many bushes are in the yard and the frequency of how often you trim the hedges will depend on which type of machinery that you want to use, or which hedge trimmers. Okay? Now, in the how to trim hedges, the first step that I want to talk about is simply trimming the hedges just in a basic shape of what they look like they should be in. Now, some people that let their shape way overgrow, you're going to have to need to actually ask the customer, would you like these squared up in a square shape? Would you like these kept kind of in a round shape, an oval shape? I just look at the shape that tends to kind of be the dominant shape, and I trim to that effect. Okay? So the best way that I feel that the trimmer actually trims most bushes, some bushes are much harder to trim as far as the pieces that trim off very easy, harder than others, and some are easier than others. Okay? But I like to actually trim from being down up and going if the shoot is going up, I like to follow the shoot up and then just hit whatever's come from the outside, so you're just rounding it up. Okay? Sometimes as you come back down with your hedge trimmer, you'll follow the shape up and around, and then sometimes as you're coming back down, you'll hit whatever you missed on the outside edges. Also, a trick that I have learned that really helps with being able to clean up easier is starting the hedge trimmer towards the back of the bush or towards the house or the building, pulling the hedge trimmer forward. So starting in the back, pulling the hedge trimmer forward and shaving off the top and the back sides, to where as the debris falls, or the extra clippings, they will actually fall forward in the grass rather than behind the bush, in between the bush and the house. And then you've got to crawl back there and try to get that out if it's possible, because you're going to want to clean up all the extra clippings the best that you can. So again, going around the bush from the back forward, sometimes just it's going to be easier to just go back and forth, side to side, but try not to push it back towards the house. That's just a little tip. that I have learned. If you can pull the hedge trimmer forward as you're trimming, then those extra clippings will fall forward, and then you can just kind of pick them out of the bush. So, and again, just try to keep the shape of each bush how it is. You'll have some customers that will ask you to shape it differently than what it is. Many of your little like boxwoods and those types of, that have the little tiny leaves, sometimes you can see that they're in a square type shape. Some of your pencil hollies and those really narrow bushes, you're going to want to keep them narrow and squared off looking. But again, most of the time you can see the predominant shape in the bush and just try to keep that. Now again, this is a basic hedge trimming. Now if you're going to do overall major pruning, then, and where the customer wants their hedges just cut way back, you know, you're not necessarily doing a shaping, you're just cutting them way back to the ground. So this training video is particularly geared towards the shaping of the hedges. Okay, this is something you're going to want to offer if you own a lawn care business, because you can make a pretty good amount of money doing hedge trimming, and I can, or you can watch my video on how to estimate hedge trimming jobs. Okay, now after you have trimmed all of the hedges, the second main step in the hedge trimming process is cleaning up the overall main large debris pieces. One of the best investments that I made, and it's not a big investment at all, is these grabbers called claws. You can get them at Walmart for $5. These things are awesome for just grabbing the limbs and the leaves and all the large debris that has fallen from the hedges and pick them up and put them in a tarp, or you can actually put them in a wheelbarrow or a bag, whatever you want to do. I actually lay tarps out and I pick them up with my hands. You can pick up huge droves of them, throw them on the tarp. You can do this very quickly. They act as rakes, like a rake in each hand, and you just go behind the bush and pull them out, pick them up, and throw them on the tarp. Now I'm not real particular about every little detail of the leaves. Now if there's mulch bed or pine needle bed areas, I do a little bit better job as far as trying to pick up things with these claws the best that I can, depending on the area. But then I actually will go back and either blow out those areas into the grass and suck them up with a mower, or I will use my leaf vac backpack leaf vac system to suck up just the little excess left. But your overall main shoots that come off of the hedges that you trim, use the claws to get those up. Also, you can use a standard rake. I like to use the claws because it's like a rake and you have two of them and you can actually pick them up, whereas the rake is harder when you're trying to rake and then use one hand to hold on to one side of the, the debris and dump them on the tarp. So the claws, really huge thing that you're going to want to get from the beginning. I didn't find out about those until a year into my business, and I was just using my little hands trying to pick things up. It took me so much longer, so make sure you invest in some of those claws. So that's step 2, using the claws to pick up the debris and put it on the tarp. Okay? Then what you're going to want to do is either take that tarp, if they have a wooded area near the house, drag it into the woods and dump it. Now make sure you check with the customer if that's okay. They probably, most of the time when I estimate, if I see a wooded area, I just tell the customer any debris, sticks that I pick up, hedge trimming, anything, are you okay with me dumping that back in your wooded area? And most all customers are perfectly fine with that. And you'll estimate accordingly. You'll have to charge more if you have to haul off. But however, if you want to drag that tarp up onto the trailer, dump it on your trailer, or dump it in the woods, then that is a other great option. Okay, and step 3 is to actually go and clean up the excess leaves or tiny little debris that is left. And again, as I mentioned before, you're going to use if you have a leaf vac system like I have, where you can suck up the little tiny debris off the driveways, sidewalks, curbs, grass areas, mulch bed areas, or if their bushes are in an area that my mower can get to, I actually put my grass bagging system or side catcher system on the mower, and I have mulching blades on my mower, or rather gator blades that shreds things up really nice. So I put the bagger on the side of the mower and I actually clean those up. I pull the sticks and limbs away from the bush areas out into an area where I can get my mower, and I actually run over that and shred that stuff up into the side bagger area. And that is a great, very quick way of cleaning up your hedge trimming debris. 4th step in this process, make sure that you go back and blow any tiny little excess debris that is down there that has gotten out into the grass or into the road, sidewalks, curbs, driveway, whatever areas that the bushes are hanging out over into that you've gotten a little debris. Actually blow that off of those areas, and many times I will actually do my hedge trimming before I do the mowing, especially on regular lawn care maintenance customers, because I want to actually be able to shred that up in the mower or suck it up in the mower with my side catcher. But make sure you blow all those areas off as well, especially if you're just doing the hedge trimming and you're not going to do a regular lawn maintenance where you're doing your regular blowing around the perimeters anyways. You're going to want to make sure that you do a very good job cleaning up. If you go and you do a good job trimming hedges, but you got all this debris and leaves and excess clippings laying all over the place, it's a half-done job, and that doesn't look good. So you want to make sure you include the cleanup in your hedge trimming. Okay, so that pretty much wraps up this video on how to hedge trim.